Handong, and he doesn't want to get into specifics, obviously. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start with treason. And this guy, Power in Politics or whatever it is asking Trudeau about Handong. And Trudeau says, listen, I'm not going to talk about that. So it's definitely, it's very interesting how much they can just get away with and walk away. They don't have to answer anybody's questions or anything like that. They've got a de facto majority government. How do you deal with treason in a majority government? I'm asking for Canada, because it seems like that's what the situation is at this point in time. Here's this exchange with Justin Trudeau. So minute 23, Justin Trudeau warning. Here we go. I know it's early.
Mr. Singh was on the show on Friday, and he said after he read the top secret report of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, he came away convinced that you had enough information and should have acted on the issue of Handong and the nomination of Don Valley North. He's now sitting as an independent. He removed himself from his caucus, and I know his future is in doubt. Do you think you should have acted? Is he done now, Handong, as a member of your caucus?
These are issues that were covered extensively as part of the foreign interference inquiry. And NSICOP has its own processes that it goes through. But I engaged directly with those issues, talked very much about what was known at the time. And that's one of the things that is really important in any intelligence gathering process, understanding what was known in one particular moment in time and not trying to apply hindsight or what we know in a different situation to what could have been done in that place. And I think there's been a bit of a blending of those issues. But
okay, October 20, what was it, October? Whenever it was that the scientists got walked out of the lab, you don't apply hindsight to that? You don't apply, hey, there's this crazy pandemic. You don't apply hindsight to that? What are you talking about? Isn't that the whole... What? What? Okay, he's asked about Handong specifically here.
But I'm not going to get into specific cases here.
He said that based on what he's read, that Mr. Dong should not be allowed back in your caucus, or should not be allowed to run again as a Liberal.
Like I said, I'm not going to get into specific cases here.
Busing Chinese students in. We can't look at that with the fresh eyes of knowing that the Chinese paid for that. We can't possibly apply the current knowledge to that knowledge also. What are you talking about? What kind of madness is this? Is this crazy troll logic? Give me a break. Brad, who's an MP in Manitoba, I believe. Yeah, Manitoba Mission. I think he's Manitoba. I can't remember if it's Manitoba. Member of Parliament for Mission Matique Fraser Canyon. So sorry if it's not Manitoba. Maybe it's not Manitoba. Anyway, he says, the Bloc just voted to join Justin Trudeau and the Liberals on a 3-month vacation instead of continuing our work to solve the productivity and competition crisis Canada faces. Conservatives were ready to keep working, but instead the industry committee is adjourned until September. So sorry, everyone. We've got things that we got to do back home. It's summertime and they got to meet with constituents, also known as hang out by the lake. So we're not going to... Nobody's prioritizing this. Have a good summer, right? Treason, get out of here, right? You have fun. And don't you think about the treason in the government, right? Just pay your taxes and go to work there, guys. Enjoy your vacation because, that's worked into your work schedule. But go back to work, which was the message from the National Post yesterday, which is weird. Very, very strange. Let's talk about COVID very, very quickly. Amazing Zoltan says, I predict these documents will line the halls of a future COVID-19 mismanagement House of Horrors museum. History's written by the victors. If this bird flu thing takes, I don't know. But it doesn't seem to be. People seem to be ridiculing the crap out of it. I'm still worried they're going to say bird flu can be transmitted via milk. Forget pasteurization killing everything. Forget everything you know about milk. Here's the evidence that the Canadian government cyber-stalked its citizens on social media activity as it related to peaceful protests against vaccine mandates. Scary and Orwellian stuff. Yeah. Yep. This is Operation Bear Hug Calgary, and it goes through the police documentation, talking about, well, it says police documented virtually any protest related to the government's COVID-19 response. No stone unturned. The RCMP thought noteworthy K-12 students protesting at schools across Cochrane, Alberta, with the bringing and singing of flags being of particular interest or concern. Well, they've reshaped terrorism to be ideologically motivated terrorism, and then they said that Christian ideology, white Christian ideology, is a dangerous ideology. And now the police are saying, hold on, nationalism, dangerous, right? Like, you can't have that. White nationalism, dangerous. You can't have that. And that's terrorism. And that's what's going on here. Like, understand what's happening. They've cast the general and majority population as criminals in waiting. It's incredible. It's wild. It's kind of the same thing as when they were banning Christmas gatherings, and then people were going to do it anyway, so they scrapped that ban because they didn't want to make people criminals through bad legislation, because once you cross that line, well, like, now we're all criminals. Like, we've done this thing. Now we're all criminals in the eyes of the government. We might as well not pay our taxes because we're criminals, right? Like, because the government's batshit crazy. Stacey highlights this. This is a grab bag of governance. We haven't done that in a little while. It's like, you know, a mix of election stuff and bad policy stuff and, you know, things people say and or do in response or directly in the House of Commons, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, there was a press conference with a lot of heavy hitters, Anita and Christia Freeland. There was Mark Holland was here, I think, too. And Stacey says, the reporter asks, if TikTok is potentially a national security risk, then why are you leaning on its influencers to deliver government messaging? And everybody kind of just looks like a carp, like their mouths are just kind of open and like they want to say something, but they don't have anything to say. And so they look down the table and who's gonna take this? And Freeland says, I'm taking this super serial. Like, this is top of the list of serious things that I'm looking at this for. Yes, sure. Do you believe her? No, of course not. I don't believe a word Christia Freeland says. Like, I'm competent to be the what's it called? The finance minister of a G7 country. I don't believe that. That is not, it's something I believe coming from Christia Freeland. Okay? It doesn't track in her actions. It doesn't track in anything that she's done. Period. Okay, here is this uncomfortable 24 seconds. Here we go.
If TikTok is potentially a national security risk, then why are you leaning on its influencers to deliver government messaging?
Sure. I mean, as you know, we do take the potential threat posed by TikTok very seriously.
If TikTok...
That's it. She just takes things seriously, and then nothing else ever happens. Sorry for the bad edit. I wish that whoever clipped this would have left more. I don't have the full audio, so apologies about that. So we'll just have to, you know, be assured that she takes it super duper serious. Just like the foreign interference that she won't call treason or tell us the names. Wiretap Media says, after Mark Holland delivers an epic speech on truth being the cornerstone of democracy, Canada's Health Commons tells the Canadian Dental Association to move on after lying to millions of Canadians about his government's free dental care plan. I think that dental care should be something that senior citizens and children should be able to access, but I don't think that it should be marketed as free because it's paid for by taxpayers, and taxpayers pay for it, and it's not free, and it's not even really above board as far as covering all of the expenses. When I was a union steward, we had to negotiate union contracts, and the union contract came with a dental benefit. So the union covered a certain percentage of the dental coverage or the dental care that workers needed, and excuse me, not the union, the contract stipulated that the employer cover a certain amount, right? And so there's insurance and there's all this stuff that goes into it. So in the negotiations, as time goes on, there's a cost to like filling a cavity or braces or something like that. And if the cost was like the 2014 cost, the dentist would charge, if it was 2017, the 2017 cost. And there'd be a discrepancy, a difference between those two costs, right? And so the union, for the duration of the contract, stipulated that the employer has to pay this amount, the 2014 cost of blah, 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 which was interesting because we were negotiating it in 2017. So it said 80%, and then we had to adjust the percentage down because of the which year we chose. The long version of this, apologies for that, but the short version of this, is the government is using like 2018 numbers and dentists are using 2024 numbers. And so there's a discrepancy between how much it costs and how much they're getting paid, you see? And so people don't understand that. There's cost to everything. And if you walk in and you're like, I have this free dental care, and then they're like, great, but see this other tooth? There's this other problem that's not covered, and you need that. And that's going to cost $250 or more, right? Like, or whatever the dental cost is, right? And so like the government is not nearly actually providing these things that they say that they're providing. It sounds great on paper, right? It sounds great until you start getting into the details of it. And it's hard. It's hard to govern. It's hard to come up with union contracts that satisfy everybody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that the messaging could be more accurate. And these people are very, very accusatory with regards to misinformation and disinformation, but they don't care when they engage in sharing disinformation, misinformation to meet their own needs and meet their own ends and goals. Okay, here's Anita and Andy again.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Minister Holland, kind of on the subject of truth, some dental associations in Canada are saying that they've had to launch campaigns to push back against what they say is a government narrative that the dental care plan is providing completely free coverage for Canadians. They say that it's an administrative burden to have to clear up that messaging, and they say that your messaging on that has been misleading. What do you say to that?
True. And there are forces in this world. You can look at Putin as a prime example, who are using modern technologies with bots and other ways to disseminate false information, to destabilize democracies by not allowing democratic countries to know what is and what isn't true. And so that is I think, an existential threat to democracy. And I think that when we're having conversations about what is true, it's important that we find new ways to communicate to Canadians where they are, so that we can be able to share what the government is trying to accomplish and why it's doing what it's doing. Because a lie spreads very, very quickly. The good news about a lie, when it spreads quickly, is that once disproven, that people start to get more suspicious generally of the information they consume. Well, I say I've always been clear about how the dental care, how the Canadian or the Canada Dental Care Plan works, and that I think we've had constructive conversations with the dental associations, but it's time to move on.
Yeah, thanks. Great answer. Stop asking us this question. It's uncomfortable and we don't have a good answer. Son of a Bench highlights this one. Polyev points out that the food banks of Canada say that 25% of Canadians live in poverty. That's 1 in 4 Canadians live in poverty. Trudeau's response: Canadians need to let us increase taxes and add more services. Trust us. The Trudeau plan has led to this 1 in 4. 1 in 4 is a massive number. Melissa says the report's methodology means 10 million of Canada's 40 million people are living in poverty, compared with 4 million people as reported by StatsCan. 1 in 4 Canadians live in poverty. That's a huge number. Here's Pierre Poilievre responding to that, because it seems worthy of a response in the House of Commons.
He's been promising that raising taxes would make life fair. We find out today from the Food Banks Association of Canada that now a record-smashing 25% of Canadians live in poverty after 9 years of his taxes, his deficits, and his doubling housing costs. Why is he going ahead with the same wackonomics that caused the poverty in order to solve it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Sorry, just before we move on, that's the first time we're going to hear wackonomics again. This is a term they're testing out. I don't think it's not hitting. Like, to me, it sounds immature, juvenile. It doesn't sound like something, whatever. They're going to want to have it on. It looks good in print. I think wackonomics looks good in print. I can envision it in my head, and it looks good in print. But it doesn't play on the speech side of things. It sounds juvenile, okay?
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition talks about affordability, but he's standing against raising taxes on the wealthiest so we can give more supports to those who actually need it. He's standing against our school food program, which is going to help 400,000 kids across the country have fuller bellies as they study, and take the pressure off about $800 a year for families who are pressed with the cost of groceries.
You don't have to buy cereal because your kid's school will feed them for you. Don't even think about it, right? Just, you know what? Let your kid live at school. That's fine.
Continuing to deliver dental care supports to seniors, and as of next week, to young people and Canadians with disabilities. We're there for Canadians. He's voting against it.
No. It would be much better to make the price of food so cheap that more than 4,000 kids can eat, right? It would be much better to solve this problem by handing people back their money rather than taking their money and redistributing it amongst friends and cronies like we're seeing that they do. Here's the National Post, and this, again, grab bag of governance. We've seen hundreds of Christian churches burned. How many mosques burned to the ground? How many synagogues burned to the ground, like the Christian churches? I don't think any, but if I'm wrong, let me know. Maybe one or two, but I can't bring any to mind. If there had been, I'm sure Justin Trudeau and the entire liberal cabinet, as well as most of the premiers and MPPs or MLAs across the country, will have tweeted about it too. And I don't remember seeing anything about it. So I'm 90% confident in my statement that probably very few, if not none, have been burned to the ground. Christian churches, hundreds. And yet, this is being reported by the National Post. Jewish and Muslim groups call for the government to create a safe bubble zone or bubble zones around places of worship. So, because of all the hate. And again, I am very certain that as days go on, I'm more certain than ever that the rail blockades were the same as the Black Lives Matter riots that had statues being torn down and police looking the other way, as the same as the pro-Palestinian situation. The pro-Palestinian situation lends credibility to the claiming of victimhood to certain groups, and now they're using Islamophobia and anti-Semitism to justify this kind of special treatment. And the reality is, Muslims, specifically Islam specifically, is doing show of force religious ceremonies in Toronto and Montreal, and we're in a situation where we should probably be responding to the real world negative outcomes that are happening in our country, and we're going to talk about increasing crime later in the show, rather than ignoring it and playing along with these claims of victimhood and claims of racism. So unbelievable, right? Bubble zones, give me a break. Bringing back terminology that we used from COVID, right? Senator Houstakis is criticizing Justin Trudeau, and I'd like to know what the comparison is for an Indo-Pacific trip for plain food. So they're saying that, well, here's what they're saying. Justin Trudeau, this is Senator Houstakis, Justin Trudeau is constantly thinking and working for poor and hardworking Canadians while feasting on meals including beef brisket with mashed parsley potatoes with truffle oil, braised lamb shanks, and baked cheesecake with pistachio brittle. That's $220,000 worth, and that's the airplane food for Trudeau's Indo-Pacific trip. And a bunch of the conservatives were tweeting about this yesterday, and it caught my attention, but it's a non-scandal, except that I'd like to know the comparison between a regular trip and this trip. You know, like if you've got an Indo-Pacific trip and you've got multiple stops on the tour and you have to fuel up the plane with food in different places, you know, like the logistics of that are going to be difficult. I don't think Justin Trudeau has really a hand other than maybe picking the menu. If somebody brings him, do you want this or this or this? Like check the box on which one you want, because there's 3 choices for the plane food and these are them. You know what I mean? Like maybe he's got that hand in it, but other than that, somebody else is dealing with all of the logistics on that, right? He's not checking. I mean, there are a lot of things you can criticize Justin Trudeau on, and being lackadaisical with spending is certainly one of them. And having a budget that's $220,000 is probably too high. Maybe he set the budget. Maybe he just said, oh, you know, do what you think is best, and didn't check the budget. But again, it just seems like something that people who dislike their constituents and think they're going to get away with it would do, right? And it seems like they dislike their constituents and they think they're going to get away with it. So they're going to spend $250,000 on, you know, their trip. But again, is that like wildly too high, or is that like $100,000 too high? Who's responsible for that? Would somebody get fired? Would they have to pay it back? Right? Like, what's the consequence for this? So, I mean, I'm not for wasting money like this at all, right? Should Justin Trudeau book commercial planes? I mean, you can't really do that, right? Like international planes, that's not how it works. So is it just $220,000 for the food, and like the whole trip itself cost, what, $5 million or something like that? Why are we doing it? Just do it on Zoom. Like there are ways to save money that we could criticize him for. But again, the details of the food just seem like, call him wasteful, call him irresponsible with taxpayer money, right? Like call him that, but like specifically on the food. Is it because Bev Oda stepped down for the $16 orange juice? Because I promise you, Trudeau's not stepping down because he feels bad about $220,000. That's like pulling a 20 off of your bankroll, right? Like He doesn't care about $220,000. That's nothing. Drop in the bucket to somebody like Trudeau. And again, it's a big deal because it's wasteful and it's unnecessary. How do we hold them accountable, right? Like Bevoda and the $16 orange juice. I'm not happy about it, but again, it doesn't seem like something that is going to set fire to the electorate, right? Because it doesn't give context. Justin Trudeau's ego is sharing this, and the video is Justin Trudeau talking about, I can't remember what he was talking about on this one. Hold on. The host is suggesting that maybe the problem is Justin Trudeau himself, and Justin Trudeau says, "Well, I don't think Canadians are in a state of mind for choosing right now." Here we go.
I know you say you want to beat Pierre Poilievre. You keep coming back to that, but what if you are the reason the Liberals can't beat the Conservatives in the next election? Where do you factor that into your thought process?
Well, I think, first of all, Canadians are not in a decision mode right now.
I hate the growly whisper thing he does. It's very annoying. We're not in a decision mode right now. I think the decision's made. I think that if we could push the eject Trudeau button, we'd push it right now. Get gone. Go. Holly Doan reports documents tabled in the House of Commons show University of Alberta economist who used his Twitter account to ridicule conservatives as idiots and sociopaths received $68,248 in sole-sourced federal contracts. Crazy town, right? Like that's pretty wild stuff, man. Like that's a lot of money. That's payment for the Twitter account, right? Or it could be reasonably assumed that that's I'll scratch your back if by posting on Twitter, if you scratch mine by giving me a ton of money. And it can't be connected to the Twitter thing. So just give it to me, connect it to something else. And there you go. They did. Sole source contract, right? Just under the limit to have to have a competition. Crazy. Let's talk about taxes and what the capital gains tax is going to do to lots and lots of people, because it's going to be a harmful thing for lots of people. Arpana says Trudeau wants to raise taxes on farmers in Oxford and across our country during a food cost crisis. This will devastate farm families and increase the cost of food for Canadians. Farmers will take a hit from capital gains tax changes, Commons Committee told. Family-owned farms will be negatively affected. Yeah. That's not good, right? Like that's a bad thing. You don't want that to happen. 30% hit on the capital gains tax. Where are they going to make that up, right? I've seen Jeremy Clarkson's farm, and they were operating right on the edge because he had, so Clarkson himself was farming it. He had a farm manager guy named Caleb and another guy named, I can't remember the other guy's name, Oliver? Can't remember his name. But he was like the money man and the compliance guy and like, can I do this and all the rest of it. And so at the end of the season, the last season, they were, Clarkson and Caleb were competing to see who could make more money. The straight up farming the harvest and like the fields and things like that, or Clarkson's alternate idea of farming the unfarmed. And so they made something like 78,000 pounds, which is like $150,000 ish roughly. And the money guy, Oliver, said, that's great. That's enough for the seeds for next year. And like, this, and he said, well, we'll only have to, go and hawk 25K or whatever to get everything ready. He's like, it's not quite enough, but it's close enough that it's not that bad. And like Clarkson was crestfallen because he's like, look at all the work that I've done. And like, it's not even enough. And so farming is stacked against, like, how I sometimes get frustrated because I'm censored, right? Farming is like that, but it's your whole entire business, right? It's everything that you do. It's everything that you try to do. And it's not just, sometimes it's like Mother Nature's like, I'm not going to rain this year. Haha, F you, right? And like you get completely screwed and there's nothing anybody can do about it. And that's kind of the risk of farming. And everybody knows that's kind of what it is what it is, right? But a whole bunch of negative things that happened to Clarkson happened because of bad policy and ideologically driven Karens who didn't like him personally. They didn't like him. They didn't like his politics. They didn't like anything about him. And because of that, they found reasons to undermine him and cut him off at the curve. And even if he outfoxed them, they would find a way to later on shut him down. That's bad policy. It's bad policy. And you can't freaking win. Like, why would you stay doing that? You can't win, right? Like, Wiretap Media says, after spending an hour using the blue-collar workers' unfair tax environment, the Trudeau Liberals laugh and interrupt a CPC member expressing Larry the plumber's concerns about the impacts increasing the capital gains tax will have on his family. So farmers, plumbers, they're all upset. The Liberals I don't think if they tried, they could care less. I don't think they could. So here is this exchange.
From Winnipeg, told the Finance Committee this morning the Liberal change to the capital gains tax is not fair to his generation. He's not wealthy. He doesn't have a gold-plated public sector pension or a trust fund to fall back on like the Prime Minister.
I'm having trouble, colleagues. James Assiniboia.
So the speaker's got an iron fist control in the House, right? Definitely they're going to listen to him. Not so much. Amazing Zoltan says the House of Commons is stunned into silence upon realizing the finance minister Freeland doesn't know the difference between income taxes and capital gains. I don't know where that part is necessarily, but I was listening because it's a 5-minute clip and I got 3 minutes in or something like that. And I got distracted by something else and I finished setting up the show and I realized I have a meeting. So I had to get this started. So I don't have the exact timestamp, but this one stuck out to me. This is wackonomics. Again, I think it just sounds juvenile. Here we go.
The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Looks like she has a PhD in wackonomics. Facts are like common sense in this government and not so common. This proud socialist environment minister's woke, radical, extreme agenda sent 2 million Canadians into a food bank and 1 in 4 into poverty. His government hid a secret report that proves the carbon tax scam cost Canadians an extra $30 billion. If anyone in the private sector covered up a $30 billion loss from shareholders, they'd be fired. So how the hell does this guy still have a job?
Weird. It's weird because you'd think like, yeah, right? But it seems unparliamentary the way he's framing all of that. I'm surprised. I'm just surprised. It's just, I'm not convinced. And that's unfortunate. So it still seems like a pantomime. Here is this guy. He's a House of Representatives guy, United States. I can't remember what his name is. I feel like I should know his name. Anyway, he's very fiery and he's talking about how, and it's loud, so I've reduced the volume in hopes of not blowing out your speakers. He's talking about how there's always money for Ukraine, but there's never money for, our country, the United States. So that's something that is happening also in Canada. There we go.
Lord, when it comes to funding the machinery of war, we have money. We have money that we couldn't possibly dream of. We can run the presses indefinitely if it's going to go overseas. If we're going to be paying foreign governments, why, we've got enough money, apparently, to send $8 billion direct to the treasury of Ukraine. My goodness, we have enough money to make hundreds of millions of dollars of our taxpayer funds available to the private sector in Ukraine. We are now literally funding their businesses, their banks, Lord knows what. We've got money without end. We've got enough money to pay for bureaucrats' salaries. We've got enough money to pay for Ukrainian government officials' pensions. We've got enough money for so-called humanitarian aid that gets funneled away from, siphoned off into any manner of corrupt uses. We won't know because we don't have a special inspector general to oversee this money, but that's a different story. Oh no, we've got plenty of money.
Lots of money to send overseas, but no money to spend in Canada, right? Pretty wild stuff. Mark Carney, old yellow teeth himself, is getting criticized for his tenure as the Bank of England chair. I think he was the Bank of England chair. And Joe is sharing this. He says, turns out most Brits aren't happy with the results of Mark Carney's performance as Bank of England governor of Bank of England, 2013 to 2020. And he's an asset. He's somebody who is a true believer in the globalist plan to do the globalist things. And he was put in place to run the Bank of England, right? And at whose behest, right? He's one of those people who's like a rook or a knight or something like that. And he wanted to be a Justin Trudeau, but he's not electable. And he's too smart to be relatable, right? Whereas Justin Trudeau is more charismatic than smart. He's more smart than charismatic, right? So he can sit in a boardroom and have meetings with high-level accountants, and they can all toss around the jargon, blah, 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 and, bingo, bango, bungo, everybody knows what you're talking about. And most of the accountants think, holy crap, he's a communist. But if he sits in a room of regular people, they're going to sit there and think to themselves, oh my gosh, his teeth are so yellow. That's it. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.